game called Sports at the Slot. I then pressed the go button. Began talking. It said, ask me a yes or no question to uncover the truth, and then press the go button. So I asked the clown, will I get a girlfriend by the end of the year? I hit the go button, and the clown began moving. It started disturbingly laughing, and then eventually said the word, no. I thought to myself, this can't be accurate. It's just a fair game. But the sad reality was that the clown was probably right. I decided to ask the clown more personal questions this time. I dropped more change in the slot and asked him, are my parents divorced? My parents have been divorced for 10 years now. I pressed go, and the clown began doing this disturbing laugh again, eventually saying the word, yes. At this point, I was really creeped out and contemplated if it was just a fluke, or if this psychic clown game was for real. I reached for more change and realized that I only had $2 left, which was supposed to be my bus fare. I planned on calling my mom to come pick me up, so I decided to use my last $2 on the psychic clown now. I put the first $1 in and was ready to ask it a question, but the game didn't work this time. I gave it a few light taps and the clown began to laugh again. But this time, it seemed like the clown was malfunctioning. It began laughing uncontrollably and started jerking its body back and forth just vigorously. The movements were so vigorous to the point where the clown started banging his hand on the glass, causing it to crack. This caused me to have a fight or flight reaction while others laughed at me. I found the whole ordeal pretty disturbing to say the least. I assumed it was some sort of glitch, so I decided to use my last $1 on one more question. The last question I asked to the clown is, will my mom pick me up from the fair tonight? Again, the clown begins to do its creepy laugh. Then it says the word, no. The next part of this story is what sends chills down my spine. My mom calls me right after the clown says, no. I pick up the phone and my mom asks me if I'm on my way home. I ask her if she can pick me up and she says, yes, I will. The call abruptly cuts off. I figured my phone had poor signal, so I didn't bother calling her back. I assumed that she was on her way to pick me up. At this point, I realized that the clown's revelation was wrong. My mom was on her way to pick me up. I head to the exit of the fair to wait for my mom to arrive. A few minutes then turned to an hour. I dialed my mom's number again, and I tried calling her back, but the call went straight to voicemail. I repeat this 10 more times as I leave her a text message saying, where are you? But I didn't get a response. I then called my stepdad. He answered the phone and asked if I'm headed home. I tell him I've been trying to get a hold of my mom for the past 2 hours. I can hear sheer panic in my stepdad's voice as he tells me he will get my cousin to come pick me up instead. An hour later, my cousin finally arrives to pick me up. He had a look of distraught in his face like he had just been through hell. I asked him if he knows where my mom is and why my stepdad didn't come for the ride. What he said next turned my stomach into a million knots. He tells me that he dropped my stepdad off at the hospital because my mom got into a car crash.
No, geez.
I panicked and told my cousin to immediately drive to the hospital. Upon arrival, I find out from the doctors that my mom was pronounced dead from her injuries. It's been a year since my mom's passing, and I always contemplated whether I was the reason for her death, calling and texting her while she was driving. My other theory is it might have had something to do with that psychic clown. A part of me thinks that the psychic clown played a part in my mom's death, but I will never know for sure.
The story is told in a female perspective. It happened to me when I was around 15 years old. I would always love going to this arcade that was located close to my house. The arcade was always open till late, so it was usually packed to full capacity. My parents didn't mind if I went by myself, as long as I made it back before my curfew was over. Every time I was at this arcade, I would always play with the Pac-Man machine. I don't know why, it's just I had a knack for Pac-Man and it was my favorite game to play. Later that night, I remember seeing these two guys play the game Dance Dance Revolution. I always enjoyed watching others play it, as it was quite mesmerizing to say the least. That's when a random guy approached me from out of the blue and asked if I'd be interested in playing air hockey with him. I personally didn't see any harm in it, so I said, sure. He introduces himself as Ben, and I introduced myself as well. We ended up playing a few rounds and even chatted for a bit. Ben was even generous enough to buy me a drink. I eventually noticed it was getting pretty late and realized it was probably close to my curfew. I checked. He proceeds to head to the restroom. I decided to call my cell phone using Ben's phone, just in case I accidentally dropped it somewhere in the arcade. I noticed he didn't have a pass lock on it, so it was pretty easy to use. I dial my number and surprisingly hear a cell phone ringing inside Ben's backpack. It sounded exactly like my ringtone. My phone must have been in his bag. I decide to open the bag, only to find my phone inside. I grab my phone and quickly place the backpack back on the table, just in case Ben came back. I felt really uncomfortable knowing he had attempted to steal my phone, considering the fact that he came off as this really nice guy. I noticed he was still in the restroom, so I randomly scanned through Ben's phone. He didn't have any social media apps, which led me to believe he wasn't much of a social guy. I nosily decided to look through Ben's photos while occasionally looking up to see if he had come back from the restroom. What I saw in the photos made me want to throw up. It was photos of myself ranging from inside and outside the arcade. The photos ranged from a couple months ago till now. As I was swiping more and more and more, I realized that this guy had been secretly stalking and taking photos of me. One photo that really sent chills down my spine was a candid-style photo of myself playing the Pac-Man machine with Ben standing right behind me. He must have had someone take the photo of us. I quickly delete all the photos of his phone. That's when someone named Greg texted Ben's phone saying, "Yo, Ben, she's still with you? I'm outside with the band." That's when I look up and see Ben staring at me with a creepy-ass smile. It was a smile that looked so exaggerated I couldn't tell if he was faking it or being for real. I told him that I was just checking the time because I'd forgotten my cell phone at home. He then says, "Want to come over to my place?" I honestly could have made a scene, but I took the high road and said, "Sure, but I need to use the restroom first." He then says, "Sure, let me walk you there." Ben walks me to the restroom, and I immediately took the opportunity to call my dad to come pick me up. I can see Ben glimpsing through the door every time someone exited the restroom like a creep. That's when I decided to tell two older girls I saw about my situation. They kindly escorted me outside, only to find Ben no longer there. I then get a call from my dad telling me to come outside and that he has arrived. I quickly rush into his car and act like nothing ever happened. To this day, I'm still traumatized from the encounter I had with Ben that night. I lay on my bed from time to time, pondering what sick plan he was orchestrating that night. All I know is that I don't plan on going back to that arcade anytime soon.
So about 3 weeks ago, I started having these strange dreams, often involving little things happening in a different order than usual. It started off pretty normal. My school bus came down my street from an abnormal direction. For some reason, this stuck with me. The dreams were kind of, like an anthology. The second dream followed the next night. The dream started the same, but this time, I got on the bus. People's faces were just blurry, and an odd middle-aged man sat behind me, which is off seeing as how it's a school bus. The man whispered to me, but I didn't understand what he said. The next night, I had the same dream, but a few minor differences. This time I understood what he said. Remember, don't ask questions. I really didn't understand what he meant by that. The next day I sat in class. I kind of fell asleep during the lecture in my psychology class. The dream continued where it left off. The strange man stood up and the bus flipped. Before I woke up, he kept repeating a name. I didn't understand it. When I woke up, my mom was calling me and I stepped outside of the classroom. So I had to answer. My mother informed me that my estranged father had passed. She sent me a link of the obituary. There was a picture of the strange man. Was it some kind of intuition? Or my mind playing tricks on me? After that, the dream stopped. I still haven't figured out what the last thing he said was. I guess I'll never know. This story is told from a female perspective. It happened to me a couple of months ago. I was on a dating app called Tinder. I matched with this one guy that I found attractive. He had a clean-shaven head and was more appealing compared to the other guys on the app. His profile said he was the same age as me, 25. The bio in his profile was intriguing. It read, "I am the most versatile person you will ever meet. I compare myself to a chameleon because I like to be different and spontaneous, randomly. You should join me." This made me compelled to chat with him. He then sends me a direct message saying, "Hi, I'm Dennis." I sent him a message back introducing myself and asked him what brings him on Tinder. He responds by saying, "Want to have dinner at my place tonight?" Ignoring the fact that I just asked him a question. Without hesitation, I messaged, "Sure." I usually wouldn't be so forward with someone I just met online, but something seemed compelling about this guy. He then sent me his address and mentioned that he'll be inviting a few friends. I messaged him back saying, "Okay," and waited till then. Later that night, I drove to his address and arrived at his front door. As soon as I'm about to knock on the front door, it opens, with Dennis staring dead at me. He had a blank expression on his face and didn't say a word. I found this very, very bizarre and creepy. About 10 seconds later, he says hi, then leans over to give me a hug. He tells me to come inside and I stupidly go inside. As we arrive inside, I sit on the couch and Dennis immediately asks me if I want anything to drink. I tell him water, please. He then tells me that Patricia only drinks tea. I was confused by who he was referring to. I asked him who Patricia was. He then tells me that she is one of his friends that he invited over. I tell him okay. Then he proceeds to get me some tea in his kitchen. A couple of minutes pass and the most bizarre thing happens. Dennis comes out of the kitchen with 2 cups of tea, dressed as an adolescent child. He wore a yellow hoodie and blue track pants. The clothes honestly look like it belonged to a teenage boy. He places the 2 cups of tea on the table and reintroduces himself again, saying his name is Hedwig, in a creepy child's voice. I found this really disturbing and assumed that this was some sort of sick joke. I awkwardly put on a fake smile and go along with the alleged joke. At this point, he tells me, "Drink the tea," again in a disturbing child's voice. I really didn't want to, and knew I had to get the hell out of there. So I cleverly say, "Don't we have to wait for your friend Patricia?" He got angry and said that if I don't drink it, he would release the beast. He honestly sounded like the type of child that throws tantrums when their parents don't buy them things that they want. I was trembling in fear and didn't know if he was armed or had a knife on him, so I drank it. The room suddenly started becoming blurry, and I eventually started fading, then blacked out. I assumed it was from whatever he put in the tea. I then remember waking up on the floor and seeing a woman standing in front of me. The woman was wearing burgundy. It looks like a burgundy long sleeve shirt, black skirt, and some heels. I eventually get up from the floor and rub my eyes to see that the woman was Dennis, dressed as a female. I remember thinking to myself, this guy is a psycho. He then said, I'm Patricia. Would you like to have a tea party with me? In a female-like voice. I thought to myself, this guy is so fucked up. I acted fast and told him, I'll be interested in a tea party only if you invited Hedwig back, which was the teenage boy he imitated earlier. Surprisingly, he obliged and walked back into the kitchen to supposedly get Hedwig. I immediately used this opportunity to haul ass out of there and drive home. It's been a month since the incident occurred. I haven't taken effort to report it to the police. I don't know if that was the smartest decision, but as I tell you this story, it still resonates with me until this day.
Please don't do this to me. I'm really scared, Trevor.
Quit being a chicken. I'm not leaving the couch till this movie's done.
I hate you!
Sarah angrily gets up and heads to the bedroom on her own while I continue watching the movie and mentally prepare myself for the argument that awaited me. About 10 minutes later, my throat begins to itch, so I decide to get a bottle of water in the kitchen. As I stood up from the couch, I get startled as I see Sarah standing in the darkness of the hallway. Sarah, you scared me. I thought you were in bed sleeping. Sarah just stands there with her eyes wide open, gazing into my eyes with her emotionless expression, almost like she was looking into the depths of my soul. I assumed she was still upset about earlier, so I said, I'll be waiting in bed, as I casually walked past her. As I opened the bedroom door, I could hear Sarah in there. It sounded like she was talking to someone, or something. I opened the door, only to discover the most terrifying thing I had ever laid eyes on. I can see Sarah standing in the bathtub covered in blood. She had smashed the mirror and used the broken shards to lacerate her body entirely. She then began yelling the words, I hate you! I hate you! I hate you! Her voice was demonic. I was thoroughly convinced that this was not my girlfriend and that she'd been possessed by some sort of evil entity. I stood there quivering, not being able to move a muscle out of shell shock. Sarah then pulls the shower curtain, unveiling a message on the wall which spelled, I hate you, written in blood. My legs go completely numb as I collapse to the floor. Sarah then picks up a large piece of the broken mirror and yells one last time in her demonic voice, I hate you! She then pierces the shard across my chest repeatedly, stabbing and stabbing and stabbing. I remember seeing a bright white light as my life flashed before me. That's when I opened my eyes and wake up to a movie playing in the living room. This isn't the horror movie I played earlier. It must have been a movie Sarah put on. I checked the time and it was exactly 3 a.m. I looked to my right only to see Sarah staring dead at me with a grimacing look. What's wrong, Sarah?
This is the third time you fell asleep to the movie that I picked on movie night. I hate you.
Sarah? Sarah?
Okay. Okay. Bruh.
I remember this like it was yesterday. My brother and I were home alone for the night while our parents went out with their friends. He's 17 and I'm 13. My brother left soon after my parents, even though he was supposed to stay home. Recently, a new neighbor just moved in next door. Some old guy. I saw him speaking with our parents the first day at his house. Anyway, we live in Florida, and it was the winter time, so it wasn't too cold. I say this because we have a pool in our backyard that's heated, and I love swimming. At around 10:30 p.m., I decided to go swimming. I called my friend to let him know, so he said he'll come over. He only lives about a street away. I start to swim some laps, and as I come up for some air, I saw the old man from next door standing on the outside of our fence leaning against the gate with the creepiest smile on his face. I lost all form of my swimming strokes and completely stopped. I played it cool and I said hi. He didn't even say hi, he went straight to, I noticed that your parents aren't home. I told him that my older brother is, and he then said, nah, he's not. I didn't see him when I was watching you through your bedroom window. I didn't say anything. I was just shocked. He opened up the gate and started to speed walk toward me. I began to back up in order to climb out of the pool while yelling help. He was getting closer, then he stopped and looked behind me. My friend was on the other side of the fence running toward us, and also on the phone with the cops. My neighbor ran into his house. The cops came, but the old man denied everything. He didn't know that my friend recorded him before he called the cops. He was arrested and eventually moved away. I don't know what his plan was, but I'm glad my friend showed up. Obviously, my parents were pissed at my brother for leaving when he was supposed to stay at home to watch me. But they were happy I was okay. To this day, I haven't seen that guy since.
This is how fast YouTube is with Brave. Notice how there's no pre-roll ads. And here's